It takes a lot of components to survive this, to survive any tragedy. And one of the things that has been very healing for us, at least those of us who have participated, and I saw as a witness at Lake Eola, when they put up the mural that Michael painted, it touched so many people. And it was very, very moving for me to see them walk up to these images and they were allowed to touch them, cry, take their time, experience what they needed to experience, and then move on. Maybe that's not the full healing process, but it starts something. And you could see the change in them as they walked away, that moment to pay tribute. So I'm gonna let Michael talk to you about his mural.
Well, thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. I came here 11 months ago after the Pulse tragedy. I was in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, painting on a section of a very large mural. It's called Inspiration Williamsport, and a 9/11 section that's called Never Forget. And when tragedies happen, whatever mural I'm closest to, I add the state birds of those tragedies and some symbolism. So that day, the day of Pulse, I added the state bird of Florida, which is the mockingjay. And the mockingjay is flying in rainbow colors, and its talons are wrapped around a stick. And coming from that stick are 5 strings, and on those 5 strings are your state flower, which is the orange blossom, 49 of those. And I invited the LGBTQ community and supporters of to come out and paint those flowers. And it was quite beautiful. They got painted very quickly. I got a call from University of Central Florida, Deborah Bidell. I said that wrong, didn't I? Bidell. Who has been amazing since the tragedy. She's helped out with the post-traumatic stress department there. She's in charge of it and has helped numerous people. She called and asked if I can paint one and drew the students that they lost as flowers and put their initials in it. And it was very beautiful. And she also had mentioned that I should come up to Florida and work on a healing project here. And then just walking through the parking lot, there was a couple heading to New York City, and they were stopping in Williamsport for lunch, and they saw what I was doing. And they were from the Justice Department here, and they had lost 2 people from the Justice Department in Pulse. And they climbed up on the ladder, and they painted the 2 flowers for their 2 students that they lost. And then I got a call from Shaman Pinder-Hurst, who's sitting right here, who's a friend of mine from many years ago when I was in college. And she had seen what I was doing on Facebook. And something kind of magical happened when she asked if I could come up and do a project. About 2.5 years ago, I lost my daughter, Sky, at the age of 19. And when she died, I walked out of the hospital and I looked up to the heavens and I said, "I love you, Sky." And a hawk flew 10 feet above me and just hovered there. And so you can probably see tattooed on my hand is a hawk. So when I paint, she's always with me. But as Shaman was asking me to come to come to Orlando, a hawk flew again right above me. And I kind of felt it was a message. It was guiding me towards Orlando. We were supposed to be in Burma. We had done some work with Aung San Suu Kyi, who's the Nobel Peace Prize winner from Burma, working on our world mural. And when I say we, I have a partner, Yuri Karabash, that has been painting with me for the last 23 years, and who is also here in Orlando working on this project. All the murals that we do around the world will connect on the internet to make one large mural called the World Mural. And it kind of just shows how we all love the same and our stories are very similar. So this mural that we've been working on here, which is a draft, I think it's behind me as part of it, is a part of the World Mural. For the whole year, our team at Inspiration Orlando has been meeting with families, survivors, getting the stories. We've gone to Puerto Rico, met with some families there, looked at walls for Puerto Rico for a mural, and the journey has been quite beautiful. A lot of tears, a lot of smiles. You know, when the families come up to the studio and they put their handprints and their loved ones, it's a beautiful moment for everybody involved. And, you know, the hugs, you know, when they say thank you, it's hard to accept that thank you because I'm also healing as well, and I'm getting a great deal of healing out of it. It's a full circle. We got a studio on Mills and Colonial, and that was also a magic moment. Shaman and I, when I first got in town, we went to the Dr. Phillips Center, and where the beautiful memorial was there with all the flowers. And Shaman walked up and said out loud, she said to the 49 angels, "Can you please guide us to our next, the next steps to take?" And as soon as she turned around, there was a beautiful Asian woman standing there, Talan, and she owns buildings on Mills, and Shaman had rented from her many, many years ago. And Shaman asked her, do you have any walls that we can paint on? And she said, as a matter of fact, I do. And she took us to the space where Andrew Spears had done his beautiful mural of the 49 birds. And next to that were some walls. And I noticed that there was an empty studio or empty kind of grungy looking place upstairs. And we asked if we could see it. So we walked through that. And, it was a mess. It was something that us artists like because we can expand on it. We know it's cheap. And we were leaving that. We were walking through the spot where the mural would be, one of the 49 murals, which I'll get to in a second. And again, a hawk flew right over and right through us out and into off into the distance. And right at that moment, me and Shaman looked at each other and said, "We're getting this space." And so we did. We got that space, and we've been there for the last 11 months. And during that 11 months, we've been working on the project that you see behind me. It is a draft. It's not the mural that we'll be working on next year. When I say draft, I've never done this before. Usually when we go to the countries and the different states here in the United States to do these inspiration murals, we go right into it. But I knew with this mural, since it was 100% a healing project, where the other murals are small sections within them that are healing, that we had to learn from the community, from the families, from the lovers, from the friends, from the first responders, exactly what they wanted. And because of that, we didn't raise money or we didn't go to the press as well. We let it organically evolve. So I had saved money for my daughter's education. And I thought, what a beautiful tribute to her to use that for this project that we're doing. So the journey has been a struggle. We've had cockroaches, termites, rats, everything, but the struggle is beautiful. It's all part of the journey. No air conditioning. Sometimes we didn't even need water for our paint. It just came off of our bodies. But, the reward was the other day at Pulse and also at Lake Eola, being there with the families and the lovers and the community and seeing them next to their loved ones at the mural alongside of all the lovers of love, which is Orlando. And, there's a story, there's so many stories, there's hundreds of them. But Shaman, there was a woman in front of Mercedes Flores, and it was her best friend, and she had tears in her eyes, and Shaman walked up to her and asked her, if there was anything that she could do to help, and talked to her a little bit about the story of Mercedes and from her perspective, her friend's perspective. And she said it was the first time in a year that she had felt calm in a place where she could be, that she felt completely relaxed. And what a beautiful sentiment to the hard work. We are just the brush. The community is the artist. And so sometimes, when people come and we experience this weekend, they'll look at a portrait and they'll say, I would like that. I would like my son or my daughter or my lover to be smiling more or not to be smiling, or that doesn't really look like them. And to us, that's the greatest gift of all, because we want them to be the artist. So we work with them, and many times we painted portraits 6 or 7 times, and we love doing that because ultimately it is for them. And even on this draft, we're working on that to make it perfect. If you look behind me, I guess I'll take this, it'll be easier. Here is Nancy right there, a little larger than she is. But we put Nancy on the mural as a sculpture in a way, a very large sculpture, because sculptures are history. Like the Pulse Memorial isn't going to be a mural. Murals don't last forever. But Nancy was under Tower Number 1 when it fell in New York. She was NYPD for 25 years. Am I correct by saying 25 years? And she was a hero at Pulse. She helped the police department with post-traumatic stress disorder. She also got that ailment herself. She moved to Florida to be close to her mother. And when Pulse happened, she rushed out and she translated for over 30 hours with families, doctors, and helped organize with like-minded citizens Somos of Orlando. And she's been a huge part of our project. She's helped us get to families. She's helped us when we went to Puerto Rico to find families there. We love her dearly. She's part of our family. And if you go up to the mural, you can't see it in here, but in her one eye are the Twin Towers, and in the other eye is Pulse. And it's so beautiful when people come to the mural and they see her that she's helped. They cry happy tears, and they're just so grateful that she's a part of this with them, especially the family members that she's touched. Myra Alvear is here with her daughter Amanda, and you might remember Amanda was on the phone and she was, doing her Snapchat, and then the bullets rang out. That's what a lot of people remember about her legacy, which is too bad in a way. So we're learning as much as possible about her, but her family has given us Snapchats, videos. This will be the world's first mural that's augmented reality. So we have animators, we have musicians, dancers, poets, people that are working with us to make these murals come to life. So when you're in front of the murals with your phone and you touch people, something beautiful will happen. You're going to start to see the legacies, the things that the families want. Right here is Patty Sheehan, who we call the Hugger. She's just a beautiful woman, has helped so many. And she's hugging Bud Connell. And Bud is the father of Corey, who wanted to be a firefighter. And Corey, Bud said when the news came, and they asked him what he wanted to say, he said, I just want to thank Orlando, I want to thank the nation, and I want to thank the world. And all they showed on the news was his wife, Tara, Corey's mother, crying. So when you come up to the mural and you touch him, he will become animated, and you're going to hear him telling us exactly what he wants us to hear. So I guess I just have a couple minutes, or a minute left here. These 4 girls, beautiful, the Kimball girls, they've made over 10,000 hearts, 20,000 hearts as of the day at Lake Eola. And they hand them out and they go, love always wins. They lost their father 3 years ago to a rare heart disorder. So like me, their father's with them through this journey, like my daughter's with me. And so the hearts come through them, and above them on the mural is a picture of their mother and father kissing. And through them are their handprints with their mother's handprint and their father. This is another beautiful story, and I'll end with this story. So many beautiful things, serendipity has happened so many times. And we put Juan and Drew in front of Matthew Shepard. And Matthew Shepard, as you might remember, was murdered in the 90s, a hate crime. And Drew's mother came in and put her handprint in her boy, and she said, why did you put my son in front of Matthew Shepard? I said, well, it was perfect for composition. And she goes, well, I have to tell you this story. When my son was young, the 2 of us met Matthew Shepard's mother. And when we met her, his mother said, was so beautiful. Drew said to me, just he couldn't believe how much love and respect that she had for her son being a homosexual. And that was the day that my son came out to me as being gay. So there's these beautiful little things that have happened, and there's so many more. I wish I could tell you more. I could talk for hours. But the most beautiful thing being here is seeing the love in Orlando and being a very small part of it. There's so many other artists, there's so many other organizations doing amazing things, so it's just wonderful to be a part of this big, beautiful team of amazing individuals that I hope one day, through artists, that we can share with the world always, so that when tragedies happen like this, that it won't be like New York City with Never Forget. When we're on fire trucks in New York, when I was with the guys, the dads are holding their kids on their shoulders, waving at us. Now when I'm on the fire trucks, we're stuck in traffic again. So it's up to us as artists, I believe, to stop saying, look at me, and it's time for us to say, look at us, and it's time for us to come together to try to help bring that message across of the whole team. So thank you very much, and have a beautiful, beautiful night. Thank you.
So like I started off with, there are many components to any tragedy, and there's a lot of healing that has to happen afterwards. And this, for many of us, has been a very healing experience. But this mural, every person in here has a story. And as we know, Pulse had many components. And one of the components is the survivors and the other heroes that appeared on the scene. So with that, I want to turn this over to, okay, which one of you two wise guys is going to speak first? I get this from them all the time. There is a magical story between these two survivors, and this is my doing here is, my main goal here is to bring this mural to life.
I'm Christopher Hanson,
I'm Kalisha Andino.
and we're survivors from Pulse Nightclub. We're going to adjust this really quick. We're much taller. So, well, a year later, we're standing here today. A year later, we're standing here today in front of all of you to, I guess, tell our story. Since that night, this lovely young lady here, her and I have connected. We've become family, I would say, probably the rest of our lives, I hope. And we have a huge connection. She, I'll let her tell this story, actually. Hold the mic.
Hi.
Here we go. I don't want to get you in the face with it.
He was the one who helped me. I was wounded in my arm, you know. I was just dancing, I don't know where, I'm outside. His hands all around me, you know. He's just a great human being, you know. He held me all the way until I got into the ambulance. He never let me go. He was just talking to me to keep me up all the time, you know, asking me questions. I just wanted to go to sleep, but he didn't let me. And I'm so grateful, you know. He's my hero. That's how I describe him. And he's always going to be with me. He's my family now. Love you.
I love you. That night was extremely difficult. Being new to the city of Orlando, I was just trying to find a community. I was trying to come out and get rid of all the stresses that I was feeling. I was about to start a new job. I just wanted to go out and feel Orlando, feel the love. The magic is here of Mickey Mouse. I experienced Disney World, and you know what's next? You know, gay club, of course. All the color, the dance, the drinks. No happy hour in this town, though, it seems like. But well, I'm sure I'll find a way. But going in there, I didn't expect what I expected for it to be a Latin night. But of course, every night's a different theme. So I'm always walking into places that I'm meant to be. I follow the steps that are placed in front of me. I don't know how I do it, but I do. And I was just fortunate enough that night to be dancing, to enjoying drinks, listening to music, moving my hips to J-Lo, and and then being there for others at the end of the night when most wouldn't, most ran. I made my escape, and then I went back. And I'm happy I did, because she's one of the ones that I got to save, and there was another lucky gentleman. He's in Connecticut. I found him as well. And Orlando Sentinel put us together 6 days later. But what do you do when you're in a scene or a situation and you see others around you being hurt or wounded, possibly being able to make their next step or not be able to? Do you just lay there and watch them, or do you help? And I helped, and I'll continue to always help. I've been in several situations since then. I'm not going to name them, but I've been able to reunite families together since then, and till I'm 120, I'll do the same thing. I'll do the same thing. Nancy, thank you for putting us together, allowing us to speak for the first time in front of individuals together.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank Michael, too. I can't forget Michael, because without him, this town's not going to be able to heal the way that we're healing. Oh, hi. Because this mural is everything. The day I met Michael, he gave me a heart, and I always carry it in my left pocket on the same side as my heart, so if anything were to ever happen to me, everybody would know that there's a connection. And I always like, when there's a rough time, let him hold it, because it belonged to him at one point. It belonged to his daughter. And that night, maybe I'll let him tell the story. No, but he gave me his heart, and I'll always carry it, so thank you.
Part of the beauty of this journey is you manage to find these incredible souls that, although I know they carry this weight, still manage to come up with the wisecracks. All you're going to remember is that I'm short. That's what, I know, sweetie. I know. Thank you, yes. So even for me, the lightheartedness of those around me, of the people that have worked all of this with me, is been so incredibly healing and valuable. The next person I want to introduce you to. Now you've heard from the artist who created the work of art. You've heard them bring their part to life, the survivors. But there's another component here, and that's the first responders. Having been one myself, I'll tell you, it is a bag of surprises. And you really don't know many times how you're going to act and react when you're in that crisis, when you are rolling up your sleeves and you don't actually know what you're going to walk into. You have kind of a vague notion, but once you get there, you realize, I have all this training, but if you don't remain flexible, that training is for naught, because the situations are fluid. So with that, I want to introduce you to Mr. Omar Delgado, Officer Omar Delgado, Eatonville Police Department, and one of my heroes.
Thank you. My story here is, I don't know, I guess different, because it comes from a specific profession that people say, well, that's what you chose to do. Keep in mind, when somebody chooses to do something for a career, we're still human. Okay, so my story was, I was in my town, the town of Eatonville, patrolling, and we received a disturbance call, something simple. And just shortly after, we received the alert tone from Orange County that the Orlando Police Department needed help. And we always kind of joke in our department that by the time we get on the interstate, I-4, they'll cancel us and turn back us around. Well, that night was kind of different. I didn't know where Club Pulse was. I had just an idea where the cross streets were, and I GPSed it on my phone. Started heading out. When I got onto I-4, they didn't cancel. And I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. So mind you, now it's 2 o'clock in the morning or so, and there's no one on the highway. And I'm going lights and sirens. Now I'm putting my life on the line, doing 100 plus, because my brother in blue is asking for help. And it wasn't until I got to Anderson when I got the latest update, and they stated that there was an active shooter inside the club with multiple casualties down. By that time, I was literally just, several blocks away. When I arrived on scene, something that was weird to me was there was only like maybe 4, 5, 6 cars there, police cars. And for a call that big to go out, there were just very little cars. And I kind of asked, wow, where is everybody? And it took me about a month or so to not be so upset about it, because I realized it's 2 o'clock in the morning. All the clubs are letting out in downtown Orlando. It's hard to drive through the streets, no matter if you have lights and sirens. I knew they were coming. It was just a matter of time. I approached the corner of Orange and Cayley, and there was like 2 OPD officers there, and I got out of my car, and I walked over to them. I asked them, what do they had, and they said there was an active shooter inside the club. I said, well, where's the building? And they kind of pointed, and within seconds, you would just hear the gunfire from all the way outside. And at that point, as a first responder, we just ran. We ran in, and now we're literally bouncing off hundreds of people that are trying to get out through maybe 1 or 2 exits. Somebody doesn't understand what that feels like, where I am running into danger, and everyone said that will eventually happen, and unfortunately that was my night, that I'm running into danger when everyone is coming out, and everyone is screaming and crying, and they have no shoes on. Their goal was just to get out. And if you don't know what that feels like, it's a horrible feeling, because it's your life, and knowing that there's a gunman in there shooting and taking lives away for a ridiculous reason, and who knows what was his reason. When I made finally entrance inside the club, it was as quiet as this right now. And it took a while for my eyes to kind of focus, and all I see are bodies laying down on the floor. And it didn't hit me. I started yelling, get up, get up, get up, the police are here. It took a minute to realize these people were not getting up. And they weren't getting up for a reason. Now, just imagine, as quiet as this is, and now slowly you start hearing cell phones ringing, because I tell you what, news travels real fast, especially on social media. So people started Facebook Live, and they were tweeting, and they were using just every social media platform there is. And now imagine you're on the other end, and one of your loved ones or a family member is at that club, because that's their place, that's their sanction, where they hang out. And now the phone calls are ringing, and they're not picking up the phone. As a parent, as someone that has a loved one, you're thinking worst case scenario. Why are they not picking up the phone? And that to this day is still haunting me. The sound, the ringing of an iPhone, because the iPhones have their own specific ringer, and you automatically know what kind of, it's an iPhone. Well, there was one by my feet that just rang and rang and rang and rang and vibrated, and it just started floating away on a layer of a big pool of blood, and I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't grab it. I couldn't turn it off. I couldn't do anything, and I just felt bad, because I knew at one point in time these people were never ever going to be able to pick up their phone. The great part about it was we started seeing some people move, and we went and grabbed them, and we started pulling them out as fast as we could. But mind you, it was very slippery. It's 2 o'clock, the club's letting out, the smell of gunpowder, the smell of blood, the smell of sweat, liquor, all that just combined. It was rough. People don't understand how difficult it was just being in there for 3.5, 4 hours and not being able to move, trying to take cover, because when we started pulling people out, we heard more gunshots inside. And at that point in time, I had a body and I fell, and I had him on top of me. I didn't know if he was shooting at us. I didn't know where he was shooting. Maybe he was upset because we were trying to pull people out. Who knew? But now I'm on the ground. I'm on the floor laying down. I had another officer on top of me with his gun, looking at 2 directions. and just sitting there, I mean, laying there and not being able to move. Finally, we get up, finally pull him out. One of the best things that happened to me was, unfortunately, that such a horrific night was I got to meet Angel Colon. He was one of the survivors that I saved, and the only thing positive about it is now we've become brothers. Horrible way of meeting, but we're now brothers. We constantly going over to his house and having special events and so forth. So I think that's the only positive thing about this that actually occurred, because this is one of the worst massacres that ever occurred on U.S. soil, and it's horrible. People need to understand that we're all grieving. We're all doing our part, but it's challenging. I've literally been having nightmares since that event. My average sleep time is 3 to 4 hours a night, and I am under. I am getting therapy and as much as I can, but it's still, the mind just doesn't want to stop. It just still keeps going 100 miles per hour. And, I don't lose faith that one day I'll be able to put my uniform on and go back out on the road and, serve and protect the citizens. But until that day comes, I know I need to get better myself. And then once that happens, then I, be able to move forward. But I do want to thank Nancy, for inviting me over. We met at the, finally met her at the One Blood premiere. That was amazing. It's difficult having PTSD because people think, well, that's only for veterans, military people, and it really isn't. Something I've learned, that the human body is not made to handle traumatic events. When you lose a loved one, it hurts and everyone grieves in their own way. People say, well, you've dealt with, bodies before. Yeah, it's true. As an officer, as a first responder, yes. You approach the body, the scene, you deal with it, and you move on, and it's over. But when you're stuck in there for almost 4 hours, looking at the same scene over and over and over, well, that's something you can't get rid of. And there's other first responders out there that are also suffering. And I pray that one day, they go out and get their therapy, because keeping that bottled inside, it's not healthy. And, hopefully one day they'll realize that they need to speak to somebody. And I hope they don't feel that they're, if they do, that they're weak. Because you know what? Yes, that uniform means respect, but it's only a uniform. I understand I took an oath, but I'm also human too. And trying to leave that at the door before I walk in my house is challenging, because you know what? Now my family sees it, my kids see it. It's heartbreaking when your daughter, and your sons, they look at you and they just know you're different. You're a different person. And I still pray that one day I'll be back to being the same old Omar, and we'll see how it goes. But I definitely want to thank Chris, because this is the first time I meet him. I've heard so much about him. I've seen him so many times, and today's the first time I actually meet him. And we're we're now going to be brothers. And this man right here, how when he called, Angel and I got together and we made this happen. And I had no idea it was going to look anything like that. But Michael, you did such an amazing job that I'm just all for words. So I appreciate everything you've done, and I'm sure the community appreciates you, because I tell you, you've lit up the path for us by painting that, and it just shows how much love you actually put into that. I'm sure we all appreciate it. Thank you, brother.
When he came to the studio, they were up there, and Angel looks at Omar, and he's like, "I love you." And Omar looks back at Angel, and he goes, "I love you more." And to me, that was just freaking awesome.
Like I said, many parts, right? So how do I wind up on the mural? And you heard a little bit from Michael about my story. I was with the New York City Police Department for 25 years. I retired as a sergeant special assignment, which means I did something that no one else did on the job. That's the special assignment part, right? I worked out of police headquarters, which is extremely close to the World Trade Center. And when the first plane hit, I was ordered to put on my uniform. We were going to do something. The something remained to be defined, right? Then the second plane hit, and you couldn't contain me anymore. I didn't want to sit around waiting for orders. It was time to move out. You needed to get people out of the way. You needed to go inside and rescue people. You had to do what you had to do. You had to do what you were trained for. So I responded to the location, and I saw what no human being should witness. I know you all saw it on TV, so I'm not gonna reiterate the observations, but I assure you, like Omar said, you know you're gonna see a dead body or two in your career. You may see a jumper, you may see a shooting, but no one prepares you for hundreds of people jumping. No one prepares you for 49 bodies. Now, your psyche is not wrapped around that. See, you're not a soldier. You signed up for cops and robbers. And that's not what happened that day to me or to Omar. My background educationally is in social work. I've done therapy for years. I was the department's expert in post-traumatic stress disorder and suicide prevention. But what happened to me after 9/11, quite simply, was that after taking care of 38,000 people's mental health, that's how big the police department is in New York. After looking out after them, after the buildings came down, and they came down on me, so I take it a little personal, it took me to January to seek help for myself. And you know how I came to that conclusion? That I needed help. The doctor needed a doctor. I stood a distance from here to that wall looking at my boss, who was breaking my shoes like you wouldn't believe. And I said, I can get her from here. I'm an extremely good shot. And the minute the thought flashed through my head, now I'm a Christian, and at that moment I thought of ending someone's life. And that rang all kinds of bells. And as the expert on PTSD for the department, I self-diagnosed immediately. And I started treatment because I was having nightmares, because I was losing sleep, because I was losing a tremendous amount of weight. 7 years later, 7 years of psychotherapy to straighten this little head out. So I ask you to have little consideration for your first responders, especially those who develop PTSD, because I don't care who tells you what. PTSD is not curable. You learn to live with it, and you learn to manage it. You learn to hold back the tears, and when the tears come, you kind of, all right, this is the new me. This is my new normal. You learn to manage it. So you ask yourself, after surviving something like 9/11, God, why me? Why did you let me live? 23 of my coworkers died, and almost 3,000 citizens that I was sworn to protect and keep safe also died. Why do I get to live? I retired, I moved down here, and almost 8 years after moving down, I figure out the why. See, managing a emergency, a tragedy, mental health issues the size of 9/11 gave me a lot of expertise in the field that I did not want to acquire, but I did. I knew exactly what needed to be done. And the one thing we haven't mentioned is that this impacted 2 communities We talk about the LGBTQ community all the time, but the Latino community was also hit very hard with this. It's two communities that don't necessarily have the funds to pay for their mental health services, or for that matter, their medical insurance. And that broke my heart and concerned me. I get phone calls that morning, 20 people dead. Oh my God, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? I turn on the news, figure out that it's a heck of a lot more than 20. Jump in my car and I go to the center, the LGBTQ center here. And I met all my friends. I hugged, I kissed them. There was water coming in, there was food coming in. Everybody was organizing, trying to figure out how we're gonna handle this. They got it. It's an organized community. Years and years of being an organized community. I think they really needed me at that moment. I left my name and number like I always do, and I headed out the door to the hospital. When I got to the hospital, I looked around me and I felt like I was with my family. See, the people at the hospital looked like me. And when they spoke, they sounded like me. And the wailing and the crying, something that I'm familiar with. And everyone was speaking to them in English. I don't know if you know this, but when you're experiencing that level of stress, if you're bilingual, you revert to your first language. And you do not process in that second language the same way. So people who were hearing names pronounced, like Carrasquillo versus Carrasquillo, were not quite getting it. Was that my son's name that was just said? And too scared to get up and ask. Because to ask meant what? To confirm. So of course you're going to start translating. Of course you're going to start running up and down like a crazy person trying to put the pieces together for them. And of course I walked up to whoever I had to say, can we please do this in Spanish now? I'm thankful that the city has learned this lesson, learned that we have to think out of our box a little bit and be a little flexible, more inclusive, that an emergency like this, if it ever happens again, they're better prepared. But this is how we learn, right? Through experience. So by the following morning, well, that night, or it was still morning, what am I talking about? I had run into my friends here, there, and everywhere. They had all responded, different locations, but we all, by that night, wound up at the Hampton Inn where the families were, all with the same concerns, all having made the same observations. And by the following day, an organization named Somos Orlando was invented out of a need, out of a community need, to service these parents, these survivors, and to look out for the linguistically and culturally competent mental health services that they would need. So, and I can point out to you the directors, the two new directors of Somos Orlando, dear friends Rafael Palacios, and my other hero. Wave, I know. Isa Montalvo, of course, but I'm just getting you to put up your hand. There you go. She kind of like did one of these things, you know. I'm proud to have been a founder of that. And my friend Sami Jaime Marrero, sitting right here, was one of the other co-founders. Because out of tragedy, we saw a gap in services that needed to be filled, and we filled it. I'm proud of that part. And I'm proud to have met these wonderful people that came out tonight just on a phone call from me. I'd been in New York, you know what they would have said, right? Yeah, right, I ain't going out. How much they paying me? I ain't going. But they came out because they wanted to share their story with you. And they wanted to make this. That's scary, yeah, thanks. Now I look smaller. I know when they said, you know, this was a police sergeant, yeah, you know, thank God they don't pay them by the inch, right? I'd be poor. Wise guys. Anyway, everyone put something into this. Everyone standing in this room and sitting in this room put something into this. Your hearts went out to us. If it was just prayers, you put something into it. If it was, oh my God, please let them have some peace, you put some into it. You brought a case of water, you put something into it. And I personally am deeply grateful, because everything counts here. So I want to say thank you to my panelists, to Kalisha for being so brave. I'll have you know it's the first time she's come out to talk. To Chris, who's forever talking. Can't shut him up. To Omar, who, like he said, we just physically met the other day. We've been friends on Facebook, like everyone else, right? And to Michael. Michael for pulling us all together and including us in this beautiful work of art. If you missed it, I'm sorry. It was out by Lake Eola. It was down by Pulse for a while. You see it in person. It's huge. It's bigger than that, you know? It's like 10 of me. Yes, that's right. But I thank you all for coming out tonight and listening to our story, and not being bored and not throwing things. That's helpful. God bless you all. Good night.